stands for the science being the starting point for any policy when it comes to climate change. You can't negotiate with the laws of physics and chemistry, and we can't keep talking about market mechanisms in their own right being the solution. You don't say, we need a new hospital, so what financial mechanism we're going to come up with that makes that possible? You build a new hospital. What we need to do is radically transform the way that we produce energy in this country. We need to move to 100% renewable energy by 2020 because that's what the science says we need to do. And 51% of Australia's emissions come from stationary energy. We need to radically change transport in this country, and what that means is a massive expansion of public transport, particularly rail, so that both freight and commuters can get off the roads, and that requires a massive expansion and investment in public transport. We also need to seriously change agriculture in this country. So it's the case at the moment that a lot of things are grown here that shouldn't necessarily be grown in this environment. It's also the case that food is not produced where people live. So the emissions that goes into producing food are enormous because of the transport that's associated with getting food to where people live. It's not remotely idealistic to call for 100% renewable energy Australia-wide. There's a research and advocacy group that's based in Melbourne and just started a new group in Sydney who have put together a report that shows exactly how we can do it. So based on technology that's commercially available right now, it's possible, it's technology that's being used in other countries. It's also a fully costed plan, and it shows that if we spent 3 to 3.5% of GDP Australia-wide each year for the next 10 years, we could do it. And that's not actually a lot of money when you look at the reduction in the corporate tax rate. So if we moved to a situation where we were taxing the giant profits of corporations at the same rate we were in 1988, we're actually funding the project right there. And it would also mean huge job creation. So it's investing in something that benefits us all, and it's investing in something that would actually create jobs when we've got a situation, particularly in Wollongong where I'm from, of massive unemployment, particularly youth unemployment. A carbon tax or a price on carbon could potentially be useful in actually funding the transition that we need to make. But standalone, these policies aren't actually going to make the changes. So we can talk all we like about mechanisms, and it doesn't mean that they're not useful, but at the end of the day we need to say what's actually needed to combat climate change, how are we going to get there, and then we can look at putting, for example, a price on carbon that can actually help us reduce emissions. And it needs to be a price that's changeable over time, because we need to look at the science in a flexible way. That means that if we get more information that says we need to reduce emissions faster, we actually have the flexibility to do that. We need massive public investment because we can't rely on the market which fundamentally failed us during the financial crisis, to actually make the changes that the planet needs. But that's, and that's not an idealistic question to say just throw money at the problem. We need to look at where that money comes from, and I mentioned the corporate tax rate before, but there's a whole bunch of options, whether it's Australia pulling out of unjust wars, Australia getting rid of our ridiculous refugee policy that actually costs us an enormous amount of money to lock people up in mandatory detention, which is totally inhumane, and actually pulling resources from those areas and putting them into something that benefits us all. So a carbon tax couldn't be implemented in a way that just hits people in a blanket way. We have to ensure that prices on things like electricity don't go up for the consumer. There have to be caps on what people could charge, but also subsidies if they hit ordinary working families, and that would include things like increases in basic wages or in welfare, that we would actually have to ensure that this doesn't hit people who are the poorest in society. Or compensation to companies that are affected by higher carbon prices are completely ridiculous. These companies have made super profits off polluting our planet. They've made those profits, not us, by destroying the planet. And actually, they should be paying to fix the problem, not us. I think we've seen a massive retreat this election campaign in terms of the Labor Party and its policy on climate. When we went into the 2007 federal election campaign, the Labor Party was saying, we will act on climate. We're actually in a situation now where the Labor Party is saying, we need to talk about it some more, which is purely a delay tactic. It's basically folding to the coal lobby, the coal industry, and the massive campaign of lies that they've run, and saying, we're just going to delay a little bit longer. But delay is denial. The longer we wait, the more rapidly we're going to have to act. Every day that we wait is going to mean injustice. It's going to mean people dying. It's going to mean particularly the poor suffering. And so we have a massive obligation to act, and we have to act right now.